Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with a story I'm calling, Oh, the Humanity! Last week, the X-Men recovered from their latest adventure, and mutants around the world were going about their various businesses. The High Evolutionary sent a hologram message to the Xavier School saying he was going to take away everyone's powers for the good of the planet's future. So he flipped a switch in space and turned mutants into regular humans. Heaven help us if he decides to take away our action movies and internet memes too. The cover to X-Men number 99 makes it look like the Evolutionary is about to pose his Wolverine figure. It's the rare battle damage variant he got on eBay for $100, and he plans to use it for a stop-motion video of Logan doing the Macarena. This madman must be stopped. Plotted by Alan Davis, written by Terry Kavanagh, with art by Brett Booth, Sal Regla, and Hi-Fi Design, the issue begins in space overseeing the Earth and what is maybe supposed to be a cell of some kind. Narration exposits the theory that all matter is composed of electromagnetic forces, including DNA, and they even have an editor's note including the full name, deoxyribonucleic acid. Who says comics aren't educational? Captions go on, calling Herbert Edgar Wyndham, the High Evolutionary, a misguided visionary who used satellites to create his X-gene canceling field. Even the unknown narrator doesn't like this guy, and it looks like he modeled a space station after Unicron.
It's a Transformer!
Whether or not he's a Transformers fan, that should be a huge red flag! As it turns out, he has some lingering doubts about his plan. Despite saying he'd considered all arguments last week and saying he didn't want to sit around and do nothing about the potential problems to the planet. Did he skip breakfast that morning before putting up his field or something? However, his discomfort over this seeming oppression of the Earth is put at ease by his associate, standard smart-looking bald guy and mutation gene specialist Dr. Essex. Discount Albert Einstein tells his former pupil that all he's done is balance things out for the planet, though Herbert is concerned that his evolved mind distances him from the rest of humanity, and maybe inviting Essex was not just for counsel, but to have a friend around. Essex just calls it a bonus in their adventure of equalizing mankind, costly though it may be. Mutant kind, brought low by a man called Herbie. On Genosha, the human magistrates are regaining control with robot enforcers. Iceman and Beast are protecting some fellow former mutants, somehow along the way having found some guns and tactical gear, and they're beset by two killer robots. Because of the magistrates' greater numbers, training, and weapons, mutants have been separated into separate groups, struggling to survive. Fortunately for the X-Buddies, Magneto has arrived and blasts one of the bots with his mighty boomstick, though the other one blasts him back. After Hank takes it out, Bobby helps Magneto up, noting he only survived thanks to the padding in his costume. So those aren't real muscles? Guess that's all it takes to protect someone who's probably pushing 80 at this point. Polaris, whose presence is quite a shock to her ex-Bobby, mentions they swung by because of talk of the two X-Men on the island. The human magistrates are suppressing information to better wipe out the depowered mutants, but they aren't responsible for the de-evolution. We've been watching their YouTube channel, their Instagram, even their TikTok. If they'd been behind this, they would have posted it somewhere. We hop on over to the United Nations, whose Security Council has been in session for 48 hours. Genosha's representative, Alda Huxley, has the floor, noting the island's media blackout, satellite confirmation of civil war, and the possibility that mutants have inexplicably lost their powers. Gabrielle Haller suggests that Genosha may now be manageable enough to retake and bring in Magneto for his previous crimes. But Alda points out they already tried that, way back in Uncanny number 200. The Council needs to talk more, sort things out, as Haller laments the absence of Professor Xavier when he's really needed. His student said he went into space to find a home for some alien refugees. Yeah, right. That's the oldest excuse in the book. No man or woman alive is a match for the plodding, ponderous pace of politics. I like to think that Stan Lee can sense alliteration like that from wherever he is now, and is responding with a knowing smile and a gentle nod.
My spidey sense is tingling.
Xavier School is closed for the time being, with much of its non-essential functions turned off for lack of use for several weeks. So it's been a couple of weeks since they've lost their powers. Would have been nice to see that clarified a little earlier, but moving on.
Just go with it.
Kurt Wagner is following a hologram of his former Nightcrawler self through an acrobatics gauntlet, trying to keep up, but his muscle memory of his circus training exists in muscles he no longer has, and he soon falls into a safety net. And I guess they just happen to have some gloves and boots for his normal human form for just this eventuality in his style. Peter Rasputin approaches him, captions saying that he now has a burgeoning career as an artist, wondering why his friend is pushing himself so hard. Kurt liked who he was and has found the extra digits and loss of his tail less than a blessing, and this is from a guy who wants to be a priest. Since he lost his sense of balance along with his tail and practically needed to learn to walk all over again, who can blame him? Pete says he's preoccupying himself in what he was, instead of enjoying what he's become, but the mansion is the only home Wagner's ever known, aside from, the circus. That's why he chose to stay behind and maintain the place, while everyone else explored life outside the X gene.
A couple of them got jobs in retail and food service. I give it a week before they're begging to fight giant robots and supervillains again.
And take a look at that notebook, Chimpokoman. That feels like it could be a reference to both Pokemon and South Park at the same time. Referenceception! Pete's around so he can watch the place while Kirk travels some if he wants, and that's when Kitty Pryde returns home after attending a seminar. While the lectures were fascinating, her classmates were apparently stereotypical teenage girls largely interested in boys and fashion, which she can't much relate to given the action movie-style life she's lived up to now. She then opens a letter from Warren and Betsy, former Angel and Psylocke, in their latest beach destination to St. Moritz, and the rich boy seems to really enjoy being able to go to properties he doesn't own without being hassled for having wings, though Nightcrawler seems a bit skeptical. Can the opportunity to pose on the shoreline truly be worth losing the ability to fly?
Well, the FAA is off his back, he doesn't get as many people asking if he's high-fived Jesus, and strangers don't try plucking his feathers for good luck.
I noticed that Betsy no longer has those red marks on her face that she got a while before this after some magical doings, which is kind of complicated to get into right now. It's stuck with her since, but I'm surprised it's gone, as it was mystical in origin. Maybe they vanished through the magic of artists forgetting to draw them in. Aurora Monroe and Sarah, former Marrow, are volunteering at Camp America, which caters to the underprivileged kids in the community. Kinda weird that Sarah still has pink hair, which isn't naturally occurring as far as I know. Heck, same for Lorna's green hair. Maybe each of them just happened to have the proper dyes on hand?
Well, whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
After seeing some kids off for the day, Sarah says she has a date with a guy named Brad, whom she claims can see past appearances.
Which must be true. After all, he said it to someone who no longer has bones growing out of her face.
Storm gives her blessing and the girl takes off, with the former weather goddess contemplating how difficult it was to convince her charge to assist at the camp in the first place. Ro had hoped to bridge the usually tense gap between them, but finds Sarah's exuberance quite miraculous, even helping the mentor deal with her own power loss. An internal dialogue followed by external dialogue where she should have felt thunder coming, and how she won't get used to not sensing the elements. So I guess she's not as accepting of her depowering yet, even though she's kind of gone through it before. But what of Rogue, a woman who spent the years since her powers emerged keeping even the closest people at arm's length? Well, we see her decked out in a snazzy suit. Connecting with her friends has turned out better than she could have imagined, according to narration, but her trip in a cramped subway is not quite so wonderful.
And if New York subways are anything like the late-night hosts say they are, she may be over her desire to have physical contact with people ever again.
After a daydream about the flight she used to possess, she's being called by a prison guard. "Credentials checked out clean. So you coming or what, lawyer lady?"
Lawyer? After such a short amount of time? Did she just have really convincing false papers, or is the bar exam really just that easy?
She's meeting with her foster mother, Raven Darkholm, telling her that after the Justice Department listed the aliases she was trying to erase in Part 1, her high-priced legal team stopped taking Rogue's calls, regardless of having accepted retainers.
Well, come on! A good lawyer couldn't win this case!
They'll likely have their own high-priced legal teams prepping fraud suits. Raven's already getting squirrely from the charges she's facing, not to mention spending so much time in one place with one face. She doesn't believe the legal system is really for mutants, former or otherwise, and insists on breaking free. Yeah, let's be honest, the whole mutants' rights issue aside, she's just scared of facing the consequences of being a murderer, among other things. We jump to a hidden community, where a woman called Domina holds her daughter, having drowned when she lost her powers. Despite her loss, she declares the Neo will survive, and though wanting to live in peace with the humans, she blames them for her child's death, and takes it as an act of war, which her foes will lose.
Yeah, I don't know who this lady is, but it is weird that this is several weeks after the Great Unmutanting, and we're only now getting this tragedy being addressed.
Back in the United States, Jubilee is on the run from some thugs, threatening to sexually assault her, and without any powers, she can't really do much, because I guess she never learned hand-to-hand combat. A shadowy figure with claws shows up to scare them off. If any of you have harmed a hair on the little lady's head, you'll be chewing on pieces of each other by the time I'm finished.
Oh no, I literally grabbed her by the hair, and I taste terrible, run away!
The conflict is over before it began, though given what they were planning, I wouldn't have been opposed to a bit more injury on the aggressor's part. We see Wolverine in full tattered costume, with bandages over his gloves. Captions note how his days of animal keen senses are gone along with his healing factor, so he's in the advanced stages of adamantium poisoning, claiming Moira McTaggart tried helping with no results. He won't go begging the High Evolutionary for anything, not when other X-Men like Rogue and Marrow have benefited so much from their new lives. For now, he tells Jubes to go home while he settles up with a man named Creed.
He's talking about a different dude, but then he finds out that Creed was the name of the band, not the lead singer, and that just wasted time he could have used to cross more things off his bucket list.
So has he been walking around town for weeks in his costume looking for crimes to stop? Or was he specifically trailing Jubilee because he figured she would be in trouble before he kicked the bucket? Or was this just a coincidence? Anyway, Danny Moonstar has a vision of wearing her old X-Force costume and following Cable's voice to a strange mechanical cocoon. When she snaps out of it, she tells her teammate Sam Guthrie, formerly Cannonball, that it suggests that her powers of casting psychic illusions may not be completely gone, but perhaps changed, and possibly into something terrible.
Only if you use them to start your own psychic hotline.
On Genosha, Hank McCoy is studying some mutates, people whose mutations were manufactured, with stalled transformations in reaction to the worldwide power loss. It likely won't be long before every organism on the planet is affected with the same degradation. Magneto would like to help, even foregoing the rest he needs, but his people take precedence. Weird thing I noticed, we see Magneto in the background here, back to the reader as he faces Hank in this panel, but Hank's reply is in the same panel, coming from the opposite side of where it should. Maybe they, for some reason, were trying to connect it to that close-up in the next panel. Anyway, the Acolytes, what have them thar technological know-how, managed to build a transport for two that can cloak from radar. Bobby assumes that Magneto is about to abandon ship, but Lorna tells him it was so he and Beast could hightail it. Drake senses something between the deposed leader and his ex-girlfriend, and doesn't want to leave her behind, but she's right where she wants to be. Magnus expects the two X-Men to return to their team, find the source of Wyndham's de-evolution, and save the day like always, even without their powers.
Try knocking on the door to his space station and say you're delivering a prepaid pizza. It's crazy, but it might just work.
Speaking of, the High Evolutionary has noticed a secondary shielded transmission originating from his own station. He doesn't have time to call Scooby and the gang for this mystery, as he's incapacitated by Essex, freezing the circuits of his containment suit and locking him in. Glowing green and expositing that Herbert is too attached to his humanity to truly utilize the power at his command, he's revealed to be Mr. Sinister, now with a stylish goatee. He's already initiated modifications to the evolutionary satellites to affect all life on Earth for his experiment in accelerating and exploring mutating genetic lines in a single generation.
This is going to get me so many views on YouTube. As long as I make sure to select not intended for children, I can't afford another strike on my account.
Of course, this reveal probably didn't come as much of a surprise to anyone that already knows Sinister's real name is Nathaniel Essex. Not just for readers, but also, people in the universe. High Evolutionary really should have accepted that mailing list from the X-Men. And considering how smart and how long Tall, Blue, and Pasty's been around, you'd think he would have come up with some other alias other than using his real last name for his disguises. Anyway, this issue gave us some insight on how the X-Men might adapt to the banality of human life, and it's understandable that many of them would be okay with it. Though I feel like only the surface has been scratched so far. There seems to be more to explore here that they didn't get into, and some of it may have happened in the time jump of a few weeks between installments, leaving a few questions, and not just how Wolvie controls his claws without any mutant powers.
But maybe the answer, among others, will be forthcoming next week when we wrap this up. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.